Listen to the river, does it make you wonder how anything could ever stand still? First lightning and then thunder, the kiss and the rain, love, feel the thrill. I only want you, I only want you, I want what we had. I only want you, I only want you.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Morning Coffee with Rick Alexander. Happy Labor Day. I hope that you guys had a nice long weekend. I hope that your jobs gave you a nice long weekend, and hopefully you're not going into Tuesday hungover, because that will turn it into the Mondayest Tuesday ever. Nobody likes that shit. Also, that intro music, as always, provided by Brittany Taylor. Today, I want to talk to you about the rules in which you follow. So I talk a lot about our subconscious, and some people might refer to these as the stories we tell ourselves. But when I take a step back and I look at the human experience, and I look at us all sort of scurrying around, trying to figure out and find our way in the world, it's interesting to me that we really always have to figure out a way to get past our own subconscious. We have to get past our own sort of mental blocks and things we've been told and the things we should do. And we're always just sort of wading through all of these difficulties in order to try to master our own lives. And I think the way that that starts is by mastering our own mind. And the only way that that starts is by recognizing the things that our mind is constantly throwing at us. Namely, those things are coming from our subconscious. So some people might refer to these as the stories that we tell ourselves, but the reason I like to refer to them as rules is because you sure as shit are abiding by them. So it's important, I think, to check in with the different rules that you're following. Now, on last week's sideshow, me and George Briones, we talked a little bit about programming, but that's something, if you don't listen to the sideshow, I'm gonna recap it here, but that's something that I think is really, really important to recognize. Now, what happens as we're growing up, we're told something about the world. And then we go out into the world and we experience something. And then we bounce what we're told off of what our experience tells us, and then we build a rule off of that thing. All right, so a really rudimentary example would be your parents tell you, don't touch a hot stove. And so you know, you don't touch it. But a lot of kids are going to go out and they're going to touch a hot stove anyway, and they're going to burn themselves. And then their parents, if they're good, will come over and they'll run their hand under cold water and they'll calmly explain that's why we don't touch hot things. And now you know, if stove is hot, don't touch. Now, the plan is that your parents are going to program as many, your parents and your teachers and society is going to program as many helpful things like that into your being so that you don't have to go around touching every hot fucking stove that comes up in your life, right? Now, the downfall of that is that people who are programming you, who are telling you what you should do and what you should want, they have a certain view of the world. They have a certain lens, a way that they look at things. Now, if the way that they look at things isn't conducive to what you want to do in the world, now you have a problem on your hand because you have patterning and you have programming, you have this flow chart that's deeply ingrained in your body, and you got to figure out a way around that. I'll tell you a super complex one. I used to think that I always believed in God. I grew up in church, and I know this is a little bit personal, but this is just a really interesting example. So I grew up and I believed in church, or I believed in God. And after I got older, I sort of fell away from the church. There were things I didn't really agree with, yada, yada. I'll save you the boring story. However, every time I was in a situation in my adult life where I thought that I might die, I instantly prayed. And I always took that for me deep down actually believing in God, even if I pretended that I didn't outside. I always kind of knew, okay, deep down I do think that there's a God, because I have this reaction every time I think I'm going to die or I get in a really scary situation. And then once I learned about patterning, I had to go back and I had to look, holy shit, is this something I actually believe? Or is this a flow chart? If die, then pray, right? If feel like dying, then go pray. And that would be like a literal yes or no flow chart. And then what we have to do, our greatest challenge in our life, is to go back through a lot of our programming and our patterning. And we have to learn whether all of the hot stoves that we've been told to stay away from are actually going to hurt us. Because sometimes other people might not just understand them, right? So if your parents grew up believing that you have to climb the corporate ladder and you have to have a 9-to-5 job and you have to have a mortgage and you have to have kids, you have to have all these things. They're going to program them deep into you. You're going to see them, and then when you go out into the world and you don't maybe have those things, maybe you're single for a certain amount of time or whatever, and then people make you feel stupid, so now you're bouncing what you're told off of your real world experience, and then now you have new programming, right? So you have to go back. Our greatest challenge is to go back through our lives to check in with our programming and to figure out what programming is serving us, and then what programming is actually keeping us from living the lives that we actually want to live. And these are the rules that we live by, the rules that we are constantly telling ourselves. We're wading through, our mind is constantly going through flowcharts. And you know, when people are creating artificial intelligence, that is essentially what they're doing. They're trying to recreate really, really complex flowcharts, because over time, those flowcharts begin to look like consciousness, right? So what are the things that you've been told not to do that maybe you even had an adverse experience with, or maybe you went out into the world and you saw somebody else that was doing those things and they failed. And so now you don't believe that you're actually capable of them. There are so many ways that we end up with these rules. Now, rules are necessary for good order and discipline, but man, if you want to have fun, if you want to live your life based off exactly what you want your life to be, well, then you got to be okay with breaking some of the rules. Because I'll tell you right now, like most of the people that I have on Lionheart Radio over the 100 episodes, the high performers, they've all broken some kind of a rule in their lifetime, especially the entrepreneur types. You know, I was talking with Teal Setz and Lee. She's a pro mountain biker. I mean, this girl literally took something like mountain biking. This is not a sport that you're going to see constantly on SportsCenter. Like, this is pretty fringe. She's sponsored by a marijuana company. She's a mountain bike racer. And when I asked her at the end, I said, the normal Lionheart kicker, I said, if you could give blanket advice and it were guaranteed everybody in the world would hear it, what would you tell people? And she said, you know what? We're all making it up. We all get up every single day. No one has a fucking clue. They're just making it up. Now, the question is, since we know we're all making it up, are you making it up based off rules that you don't even know that you are following? Are you making it up based off programming that you think is essential to your life? And I think it's easy for us to look around and feel like maybe we're not capable of things. You know, maybe people like us don't do things like that. I know I was told that when I wanted to go to the Super Bowl when I was younger. I remember watching my home team playing the Super Bowl, and I said to my dad, wouldn't it be super cool if we could be there? And he kind of looked at me, and he wasn't being a dick. He just grew up with a different worldview, and that's what you need to understand. And he said, you know what, son, like people like us, we don't do things like that. Well, I'm telling you right now, I've been to about 15 Patriots games. I've been to 3 playoffs, and I've been to the Super Bowl. Because fucking people like us, we do things like that. Because we have a different worldview, because we don't buy into programming that has been pushed down our throats. And sometimes it just takes stepping out of our comfort zone and expanding our view, realizing that the people that have influenced us are not trying to harm us in any way. They're just giving us the best programming, the best rules, the best patterning possible so that we can succeed based on the way that they view the world. The difference is you and I, we view the world differently. You and I, we do things like that. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I hope this serves as a moment of introspection. Maybe try to look back at some of the rules that you're following and see which ones are serving you and which ones are not. And I'll talk to you guys later on Morning Coffee.